Running Sentences presents The Murderious Yacht. Part 1. Introductions Abound. A group of 4 detectives find themselves invited by an old man aboard his space yacht. He is worried about a plot to kill him. This story is narrated and written by Michael Honore. This is a work of fiction. Many names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, real situations, events, characters, and so on is purely coincidental. Copyright 2023, Michael Honore. All rights reserved. The grand entranceway to the multi-million, if not billion-dollar space yacht of one Ebenezer Slithered was immaculate in all ways. It was clean, shiny, and most of all, everything looked expensive to touch. He stood there, staring at the gangplank, waiting for his guests to arrive. The doors that separated the ship from the guests' boat that would bring them aboard zipped over, and in they came one by one. There were 4 of them, each alien in different sizes and shapes, that came in at their own rate. "Welcome, Blur, to my grand ship." The slow blob that was semi-translucently formed into a better shape that could move about on legs came before him. Once it had a better shape, it decided to give a deep bow to him.
"Oh, thank you very much for your invitation, but I'm not sure why I am here."
"You will find out soon enough. There are other guests to attend to, though." The next creature was coming through the doorway, and so Blur stepped to the side. This was a will-o-wisp woman with long arms and legs that stretched out and had already grasped the hold of Ebenezer's hand to shake it. And this before she was even fully in the room. When she came in, she moved quickly to be right in his face.
"It is a pleasure, sir, to meet you, sir. I have heard much about you, or rumors about you."
"Likewise, Miss Cobra. Your work and intelligence precede you greatly. I doubt there is anyone around here, anyone around the 4 galaxies, that don't know of your skills in getting things done."
"You flatter me far too much, sir."
She bowed and let go of his hand, and she too stepped to the side. The next figure was through the door quick as a rat, and quite small too. The figure, which came up only to Ebenezer's knee, looked up to him and then began to climb up his leg. As the old man held out an arm for Scrape, this figure, to scurry onto, which he then did.
"You called?"
"Yes, I have a most pressing matter that needs to be attended to. I think you will help solve it nicely, but there is one more of you yet to enter, so if you don't mind." Scrape was off and down him in a second, standing to the side with the other 2, who were talking in quiet whispers. Ebenezer ignored them, as the doors opened once again to reveal a middling woman with a lobster-like appearance that was deep red. She crawled along on her legs, as lobsters do, but upon getting to him, she rose up to stand like a human would. He noted her hands and claws that moved about on their own, which then moved to grapple at Ebenezer's neck in a snap of a second.
Apologies. These hands and claws are what that my people gave me. Do what they will."
She withdrew her claw from its choking position, allowing Ebenezer to breathe and relax. There were a few gasps and coughs. "Yeah, it is fine. I was already well aware that it could happen, and was ready for it." There were a few more gasps and coughs from him as the others circled about. When Ebenezer had recovered, he signaled that they should follow him. "Welcome aboard my glorious space yacht, the Princess of the Planets. It has set many space records in its attempts to cross the galaxies far and wide, and ones from many, many years ago." He moved toward the door that had a sign for the ballroom above it.
"Why did you bring us here?"
"Would you believe me if I said death stalks me, Miss Cobra?"
"Nope." because death stalks all of us, and it does it all the time. What makes you special, Mr. Ebenezer?
They were all now at the door to the ballroom as Ebenezer turned around to face them and to face down these accusations. "Assassins are after me." The door opened, and he was quick to step into the next room. The ornate ballroom with the tune floating through greeted them. The waxed dance floor led them to slide about each of them as they moved across it, quickly aside from Ebenezer, who seemed to step with ease. "What do you mean?" "It has become clear that someone in the government, a galactic government, or maybe someone else in a high place, wants me off this spatial mortal coil, so to speak."
"And you have no idea why?"
The foursome were following as best they could towards a door to their left. There was another door on the end of the giant space and one to their right that they noted. None of these ones seemed to have signs telling them what was in them, though. "Probably because I'm rich and told people how to do things, like get around regulations from government organizations, and, I happen to be a part of the government, and people in the government sometimes are targeted. It doesn't matter much why, just that I've hired you to find them and stop them." The group continued their slip-and-slide antics of what they could now guess was an overly waxed floor. Ebenezer had no trouble with it, as he was through this new door that he had headed towards. The foursome had regained their footing. The group had followed him into a fine mahogany dining room, where each piece of furniture and wood was finely polished. Ebenezer was already seated at the head of the table and signaled for them all to take up seats. "I have requested that a light dinner be served before we get down to business, if that is okay." Scrape was quick to move to his seat and sit down, picking up the utensils and looking rather famished.
"Fine by me. The rich don't serve bad food, do they?"
"I wouldn't think of doing so, no. I have, though, taken the liberty of ordering foods for you. You'll be getting the popular dish from your home planet, if that is okay. I can still have some stuff changed, if you wish." The others had taken up their seats at the long table, all near the man who had brought them there. There were nods of approval all around from the guests as they settled in. "Good. There will only be a few minutes before the food pops up, but let me mention one thing about this nefarious plot. I believe that the murder will take place tonight aboard this yacht. That is why the best detectives money can hire were brought here to help me. So, thank you for showing up, and thank you for stopping all of this." There were a few glances between the four detectives and one another, like they didn't buy this completely. That was fine by Ebenezer. You can't always get everyone to believe everything he'd ever said, but it would all go down, so there was a need to speed things up.
"You have evidence of such things, sir?"
With a reach inside of his pocket, Ebenezer produced 4 letters, which he dropped onto the table. They were then pushed over to each of the detectives, who took turns reading them. "A copy of the latest threat to me. The original is safely tucked away. It isn't a terribly complex threat, but it certainly gets to the point it was trying to make." Scrape had distributed copies of the letters, all of them, who opened them and read them carefully through, and checked over to make sure that they all matched one another. "Dear Ebenezer Slither, your time on this planet is now short. I have authorized a party to come take what is rightfully mine, your life. Yours truly, the cruel one." "Yes, as Miss Bouquet has kindly read out, that's the extent of it."
"The name is Bucket, and without seeing the original letter, how are we to know that this is real?"
The letter was waved about for a second before being idly tossed back to the table by Bouquet. 2 other letters quickly joined the piles. The one held by Blur went into a pocket. "You will have to trust me on that matter, unfortunately, and I don't really have a way of proving everything just yet."
"Do you not trust us?"
Trust is a tender thing, Mr. Blur, and that cannot just be handed over for every little thing. Solve the crime, and you can see the original, and you'll actually see the whole matter of the thing, probably. And then Ebenezer nodded towards a part of the wall which opened behind him as in came a series of robots, delivering the ordered food by the man. Plates were put in front of all of them as Ebenezer swept away the letters, except for the one taken by Blur. You can decide to not trust me on this matter and question it all you like. That is your job, after all. The facts are the facts, though. A murder will happen here tonight. Now let us not talk of this and enjoy our dinner. This drew curious looks from the group of detectives, which is what he wanted. A group who wanted information, especially detectives like these ones, were ones who would seek things out. I don't know, this all sounds fishy to me. Cobra looked down at the fish soup with a dead fish plopped into it. Now, that may be the soup. You will further discuss matters once you've eaten. I'm not afraid of the killer trying to get me here at the moment, if only because they said when the clock strikes 7, that is when the ship goes into maintenance mode, and nothing I can do will stop that. They stared on in wonder as the old man, with a shock of white hair, just began to eat his own soup as if nothing was going to happen. They then all settled in to eat as well. After this hearty dinner, the group then retired to a new room across from the ballroom. It was a soft, warm one that greeted them, with plenty of chairs and drinks to go around. The plush space of the lounge was a comfy one with a computerized fireplace roaring and giving off a bit of heat to keep them warm. Perhaps now you can explain a bit of something? The detectives had all sat down while Ebenezer had not done so. He instead went to a nearby desk and pulled out a file, which he brought over to the coffee table in front of the couches that they all sat down on. It fell with a plop onto this table. As I said, I don't know much of why or who, just that it's supposed to happen and that's what's going on. The file is all the information I've collected on potential threat. Bouquet would be the one who opened the file and glanced at the first page with Scrape looking over their shoulder to see what they could see. And your first suspect is the government? That's a lot of enemies for such a thin folder. Doesn't make any sense to me. Neither does someone wanting to kill me. I've kept things short and quick because we don't have much time, do we? Why did you call us so late? Well, the letter arrived within the past day or two. Also, space travel takes time, as you can attest to. The folder was being passed to Blair, who looked it over, skimming through the pages in a hurry. From what Ebenezer knew, that was Blair's specialty, taking in information at a rapid rate. The question of the moment, however, is, can any of you help me, or are you all going to run away? The folder was still being passed around and looked over by the detectives. None bothered to respond as they all looked at one another, trying to figure out how much information they could trust. There seemed to be a silent conversation going on between them from what Ebenezer could tell. He looked at the nearby clock, which read 5:30 p.m. I, at least, take cases on a case-by-case basis. This, so far, doesn't sound like a case for detectives, but bodyguards. Why do you need us? The best people for the jobs are curious ones who will keep prodding and pushing and solving things. You know, there's a puzzle before you. So, are you going to take it, or are you out? This time there were murmurs between them, until a consensus was reached, and they all sat back with arms crossed. We will stick around to see what goes on, but one question if you don't mind. Feel free to ask away. Why only now? You seem like the type of person that would be on all sorts of hit lists all the time with the way you use your wealth and power. Ebenezer nodded and smiled as he looked at the clock for confirmation of the time. It was moving quickly, and he settled into his armchair as he saw it was now 6 p.m.
Time was certainly flying, by the time the file had been fully digested by all four of them. The threats have always been there, but now I'm close to retirement, and I no longer have to answer to people. Those people probably wish the secrets I know to stay secret.
Retirement is the only reason, then?
Well, Mr. Scrape, I can't say that for sure, but I assume so. Things always get messy, and reasonings for things are not so clear, as everyone does their own reasoning about what they want in life. Bouquet was the first to stand up from the sofa and began pacing about the place. She looked like she was looking for something. I take it then at least one of you is willing to take up this file. What are you looking for in particular, Miss Bucket?
Thank you for remembering my name. Yes, I am searching for how one might get in here without using the door. It's too obvious.
Oh, I do love a good fake door or a trap. Alas, they're a bit expensive to put in a ship, but so I had to pass on them, so I don't think there are any in here. He said this with a bit of a cheap smile, and as he glanced around, his eyes never settling on anything, but he seemed to be looking about at stuff.
Oh, so you're a cheap rich man.
Ebenezer couldn't help himself and smiled an actual smile at the remark that was supposed to be wounding one from Blur. He watched as Blur now got up and began their own pacing about the place. It was mostly a back-and-forth walk on the small chunk of plush carpet that surrounded the sofas and the coffee table. His walk had drawn everyone's attention with its harsh yet soft stomping. If that was his way of working things out, it was a bit of an odd way, Ebenezer figured. It should not be a big surprise, but most rich people don't like to actually spend their money. They like spending other people's money. There was nods all around as the four had apparently agreed to this job, since they were all now looking about the place for clues, all without saying so, which was good for Ebenezer. The room was big enough that all four were soon walking about the place without running into one another. Time ticked by as they looked curious, but seemed to find nothing that satisfied their curiosity.
I don't understand this at all.
Mr. Scrape, it is all about money. Now do you understand?
That makes sense, but only complicates things.
Ebenezer offered a shrug to Bouquet. As to him, things were already overly complicated, and the looming idea rather made that all moot to him. Complications just were not worth the effort. Through all of this, he found his eyes moving towards his watch, which now read 7:29 p.m., and he felt a bit of his stomach lurch. Was the time over, or was it time exactly? He couldn't remember for that moment, and it was worrying. Did anyone find anything that would let an assassin in here, or any weapons of some sort?
No, why?
It's about time for them to strike. And with that, the room was suddenly plunged into darkness.
What's happened?
A gunshot rang out, followed by a flash, and then another gunshot. It then went quiet as the lights slowly and dimly came back up. All four detectives looked towards Ebenezer to find the man sitting there with 2 neat bullet holes in his chest. He looked terribly dead with the way his head was off to the side and his tongue hanging out to the side as well.
Has he been murdered?
Apparently. Bouquet, you should check the body since you're good with those kind of things.
That is not my name, thank you, and I will only go over there if I'm the only one willing to.
The foursome shared a look between one another before Bucket Bouquet sighed and moved to Ebenezer. She reached out and felt for a pulse on him, but had no luck in finding one. There was also a feeling of a deathly coldness that was beginning to spread about him, which made her drop his hand, which he'd picked up to feel his pulse.
Dead, and I fear that makes all of us suspects in this case.
She then turned to look over at the 3 others, who were all sharing apprehensive looks at one another.
I didn't do anything. Neither did I.
I will proclaim my innocence of any crimes as well here, but that leaves you, Bucket. Well, I didn't commit murder. I have no reason to. The four remained frozen where they stood, eyeing one another to see if they believed each other. The looks bounced about while waiting for someone to confess.
This is awfully convenient.
How so, Scrape?
We get invited to stop a murder, and then the murder occurs. I think we're being set up if we're all innocent as we claim. Or one of us did it.
Further looks between them after Cobra had said this, and they led nowhere fast. There were shrugs all around.
I have an idea. Each of us empty our pockets to prove that we weren't the killer, because the killer had a weapon of some sort.
There were shrugs all around, and they began unpacking their pockets of what they had with them. It was a good plan, or idea, but all of them carried a variety of weapons for self-defense, and a lot of weapons began piling up. They did eventually stop after a good minute or so. I don't think that proved anything, Mr. Blur.
Yes, judging from all of these, I don't see how we can judge who shot him. He was shot, right?
From the looks of things, yes.
So, what are we gonna do now? Call the cops or something else? I'm all for leaving as fast as we can. And, calling the cops.
Why do you want to flee so soon? Scrape snarled at the insinuation that he was running away, but dropped the expression after a second.
Because everyone will suspect all of us as being a part of this. They won't stop to ask questions, so we either figure out what's happened or we leave and we have it hanging over our heads for the rest of our lives.
Silence came as they thought about what he said, and he thought about it as well. The better answer was to solve this, but that also came with risks. Okay, I have an idea. Let's vote on it and see what all of us wants to do. There were nods of agreement all around, leaving them with only one thing to do.
I vote to leave.
I do as well. That was going to be my answer. A moment passed as they all looked to Blur, who had yet to declare their vote. They appeared to be all tied up in the choice, from the way their fate was constantly shifting and different emotions crossed it.
I guess I say we go back to our ships.
With that, the group made their way out the only door in and out of here. It didn't open, as Bouquet waved her hand about, seeing if it would automatically realize that they were there and that it should open. Blur had taken to searching to see if they had some sort of emergency release button, but was having no luck. It didn't help that they were crowding in close to the door, hoping to be the first out. Oh, it appears I have died. How unfortunate. At the sound of their host's voice, they all spun about, jumping and looking where it was coming from. The man's dead body was still hanging out on his chair, looking dead, tongue still hanging out. Who said that? Ebenezer, are you alive? No, quite dead, and this is a recording I made in advance. Should that have happened, it appears that my little hires are planning to run away, are you? Not at all, sir. We wanted to check out the docking area for any potential assassins who might be running away now. The recording did not instantly respond, as if searching for the proper response among the choices it had to Blur's words. Well, I offer you a choice. If you wish to get out of this room, then you will agree to search for the killer. You will have the run of the ship, except for the escape pods or docking area. If you don't want to do that, then the police will be called, and then you all go to jail for murder, probably. Your choice, and please choose quickly. A moment passed as they all continued to look about for where the sound of the voice was coming from. Cobra had gone over towards the dead man and certified for herself that it wasn't the body speaking. This is going to sound out there, but what if this one was a clone, and now we have to find the real one?
Why would that occur?
I don't know. Maybe it's a test of some sort. I don't even know what's going on anymore, aside from potential murder. Not a test of some sort, a real genuine mystery of murder. Have you made your choice yet?
We will do it.
Don't talk for us, Blur. We will make up our own minds on the matter. But maybe I'll go along with finding things, as long as we aren't trapped here.
Yeah, well, I'm still a no.
I do hope that if one of us says no, it does not affect the rest of us. A grand question. Yes, it will stop all of you from leaving this room if one says no. That's the way this will work, because the doors are hard to control, and I'm sure one of you will try something fancy if one of you says no.
So all because of me we can't go free? How is that fair? Old, mysterious, bodiless person?
My death wasn't fair, and that happened. Life living on strange planets and somehow surviving when it shouldn't isn't really fair, yet here we all are dealing with what's happened. The three other detectives were all looking at Scrape, who growled at himself.
I will only agree to this if we can go near the docking area to make sure that there are no criminals hanging out around there and trying to escape. You're wasting your time in us discovering whether or not we're right.
They awaited a response from the recording, as all milled about the door, hoping that this would be enough to gain them an exit. But you do say yes to working on this case, right, Scrape?
Yes, I do.
With that, a door hissed open. They rushed out into the ballroom, forgetting about the floor as Bouquet, Blur, and Cobra began sliding about the place. Scrape, who was the last one out, and just to make sure that the door wasn't going to close on him, came out more carefully. A moment passed as they all regained themselves, with Cobra pointing towards a doorway.
That's the way to the docking area? Are you sure? Slightly? Wait, you just said all that to get out?
No, of course not. The three detectives rushed towards it, with Scrape confusedly following along. Their memory's fairly short on remembering certain things, as they took to slipping and sliding about on the floor towards the door. The trip through the foyer was a simple one and had no traps or tricks that sprang up on them. The door to the docking area easily letting them out into it. There was a simple metal room greeted them with a few doors that were airlocks to exterior vessels. A look over all of these that should be there were no longer there.
Fuck, our ticket out of here is gone. So you really were just saying yes so you can escape, guys?
The three other detectives looked over him, exasperated, and threw up their hands.
Of course. We figured we couldn't say it out loud, though, since the ship or the former owner of the ship is apparently listening to us.
We figured that you figured that out. You know, we're supposed to be space's greatest detectives. You lot certainly don't live up to the name.
I never called myself any such thing.
Really? I use it all the time on my business card.
Same, Scrape. I use it as well. Why couldn't you use it, Cobra? I mean, it is free advertising.
She looked confused for a moment, shaking her head as Bouquet, who was also shaking her head, signaled that she used it as well. Can a lot of you now get on to the investigation into my death? It would be much appreciated if you would do so, and just so you know, if you try to go to the escape pods next, those have been disabled.
Where are the escape pods, just so we know if the potential assassin is trying to get to them?
There was no response from the recording, so the group began looking for a door in this room. There were 3 here to choose from, one of which they'd already come through, and the new ones on either end of this hallway between the exit doors to get aboard spaceships. Well, should we split up and find it, then?
I don't think it's a good idea to. Yeah, it would be terrible to run into the assassin with only one other person to help out. Or if the assassin is one of us, then splitting up is a bad idea. It would open us up to an attack, I guess.
It's funny you should all bring that up. It's like you suspect that one of us really is the killer. Is that what you think, Blur?
You don't think it's one of us, Cobra?
Maybe I do. Right now, though, I don't think I have enough evidence to point one way or another. I'm merely stating and questioning things that, since that is what we're supposed to be doing, right? The four eyed each other as they tried to get a feel for which of them might be the murderer. The fact that they were all centered near the door that would lead out to the foyer did not pass them by as they seemed to edge their way around one another as they eyed one another and as they looked to one another, trying to figure out what to do about themselves. Well, as long as we're going together, which door should we choose? I'm all for the one at the far end of the hallway, away from where we stand at the moment. Scrape was the first to glance over their shoulder to look at the one that Blur was pointing towards. There was a sign above the door that said something, but it was written in a foreign, alien tongue. Why that one?
Because it is there. Why, do you want to go through the other one?
I don't have a particular reason for choosing any of it.
Right, then it's decided. We each go for the door we think is the right one.
Nods all around confirmed this, and they stood there for a second. Scrape and Cobra were closer to the one that didn't have a sign above it, and while Blur and Bouquet were closer to the one that did. A moment later, new groups began walking towards the door opposite of them, crossing in front of one another for a brief second as they moved to get past. Once past one another, though, on their way towards the opposite doors, they realized what was going on and turned around to one another. Why are you going that way? It seemed to be the right way to go, Miss Bucket Bouquet.
But we agreed to go to the door we all thought was likely, and, you're headed towards the one that isn't likely to lead to the escape pods.
How do you know that, Blur?
Well, I don't actually know that, but, let's settle this and go through the door that you want, I guess. If we have to go through the other door, then, we'll come back and go through that one.
The group now set off, all in the same direction, towards the door with a sign hanging over it in an alien tongue. Unfortunately, they did choose wrong, and had to make their way back to the docking area and to the other door. But once there, they stuffed themselves into a small room which held one pod. The door to the pod was dark, but the pod itself appeared to still be in there.
Can you see anyone in the...
Bouquet stepped forward and pushed at the doors, which opened and peered in. The chamber sort of lit up, but it wasn't a terribly great light. She came back a second later, shaking her head. Room for one person in there, and there is no one in there.
So where does that leave us?
With a case and no escape or suspects, aside from ourselves.
And it doesn't seem too likely that it is one of us. That said, who else could have done it?
The cold reminder that they, the greatest detectives around, were now the most likely suspects in a murder case depressed the whole lot of them. It also led to a whole lot of guarded looks between one another as they went back to trying to figure out who might have done it. It made for an odd confrontation since they were all pretty close to one another in this stuffy room.
Someone must have, since there are no signs of ships at the docking area or that the escape pod has left. They're probably still aboard, if we think about it. We shouldn't jump to assumptions since we have no evidence that it's us or somebody else. We just don't really know right now. But we need to find out.
Minor thought, though, but how do we know that no ship docked and the assassin didn't get aboard and then get out of here? They were all quiet for a moment. Maybe the ship's computer would let us know. So let's find that, shall we?
Or at least some kind of evidence that it wasn't us. Right, Cobra? Are we sure the cops haven't been called, or what are we doing on that front? We are pretty far out in the middle of nowhere in space, so maybe not. Maybe they'll take them a while to get here.
But we shouldn't rule out that they weren't called.
You mean there's a chance for our arrest? We all know the cops love to make one and then parade it out for every creature that has eyes, so we really should just get this done in case they were called. Okay, fine. Where will we find the computer to the ship? Can't we just call out to it? Most ships like these should have a computer that operates the entire ship. Go for it then, Bouquet Bucket. Bucket shot Cobra an annoyed look at being called out. Oh, great computer of the ship, here we are. Please talk to us. Moments went into minutes as they waited for a response, and nothing came. Well, the cops are probably on their way, and we are all standing around here in a small room, not doing anything. At the very least, we should probably try and go solve this case.
You seem rather eager, Scrape. You weren't before. What's going on?
Well, I don't have a choice in the matter, do I? We either figure this out or we go to jail.
I know what I'm choosing.
Scrape took a few steps forward to go back the way they'd come, but was stopped by the others. Don't think we're going to let you wander around here all on your own. For all we know, you set us all up to take the fall. We're keeping an eye on you. Then come with me. It's better than doing this alone, and it's far better to do it together than whatever we're doing now. The group wasted no time trying to be the first out of the room, as they all continued their suspicious looks at one another. Back in the ballroom, the four spread out a bit, looking for the door that would lead them to somewhere new. Blur found himself near the door to the lounge, and curiosity got the better of him. It would be good to check in the body, just in case, he figured. Maybe something happened, maybe something didn't. But bodies didn't move by themselves. The door had zipped open, and he stuck his head in, only to pull it back a second later.
Oh dear, we have a problem.
Cobra, who was the closest to him, looked over. Don't tell me the body is missing.
Yes and no. Parts of him are missing. Mainly his head.
End of part 1 of the Murderious Yacht. Thank you for listening.